Well, good morning, gentlemen. About every quarter, I take the chance to answer questions. And today is another one of those days where I answer your questions. And so if you want to put any questions in the chat, that would be great. Anything at all. And I'll look for them. The leaders have already jumped the line, and I got 20 questions already that the leaders have put forward, representing either their questions or questions from their group that they've heard. And so I'm going to just simply answer questions today. And I recognize that I'm not saying that I'm the guy who's got all the answers. I likely have some reasonably good answers that'll help you in a healthy direction. And so here's where we're going today on the questions, and I'm just going to answer them in order that they came to me. And so I'll read the question out, and then I'll answer it, and then I'll keep going. And so again, if you have questions that you want me to respond to, just put them in the chat. You can either put them into everyone or just directly to me. It's up to you. They'll come to me in that way. So here are the questions in just the order they came to me from the men. How does one know when the addiction fog is lifting? What would be some telltale signs of the fog lifting? Well, first of all, let's just make sure we understand the addiction fog lifting. You see, when a person's in a fog, it means they can't see things. They kind of don't know where they're going. Everything is kind of lost perspective, right? And a man in addiction has lost perspective. A man in addiction doesn't have a healthy view of things around him because of the fog. The fog, of course, is his self-centeredness, is his preoccupation on the addiction, is his inability to look to others and their needs. And so the fog starts to lift when people who have been battling the addiction actually start doing things like this. They start to follow through on their work, and they don't make excuses. Matter of fact, coming out of addiction, excuses would be one of the first things to start dropping, because they start to see, I got to take responsibility. So the fog is lifting when people stop making excuses, when they follow through on their work. Because you see, that's what a person who's maturing out of emotional adolescence would do. They would admit when they're wrong, they'd take responsibility, they'd follow through in their work. And one of the key things that the fog is lifting is the ability to empathize, that they can see the pain they've caused, that they can look at their spouse and instead of getting angry at the fact their wife was triggered, they're able to process and say, I caused that triggering. I'm the one, I got to just suffer in silence here because I caused that pain. She's in pain because of me. And so the fog is lifting when there's that consistency. The work is being done. They're taking responsibility. They're making amends. They're being empathetic. They're doing their work and finishing their work. And so those are some of the telltale signs that the fog is lifting. And I think the longer a person is consistent in that way, the more the fog is clearing, and we can start to see life in all its reality and how it's going. So number two, how does one safely transition from the task of getting free to the task of staying free, from a heavy engaged recovery work to regular recovery maintenance to keep from a breakdown leading to relapse? Really good. Well, first of all, recovery work is likely a good year that you need to do. It's not like, well, I'll come to regroup for 6 weeks and then I'll be all turned around. It's not that way. So understand, before you even think transition, you need to think, okay, I need to be a year clean. I need to be the 12-step program behind me. That's recovery work. Being accountable to somebody is recovery work. And some of the things that need to be in place moving forward is regular accountability as it were, myself with Larry. You've all met Larry. So where I'm meeting weekly with another person, and it's not just, it's about everything in life. I mean, our connection was about maturing as a man, maturing as a man of faith in our spiritual life, in our fatherhood, in our husbandhood, in our friendship, in our ministries. And so it's comprehensive. It wasn't focused on any kind of sexual addiction thing. We asked questions about staying pure. That's not the issue. But where you have to realize is it would be wise for you if you're transitioning from, I've got my recovery work done. You may be, because some of you have been around when a guy has got his, over 1 year clean, and he's done the 12-step program, and his wife and his counselor has said it's okay for him to step out of the group, and they give their final talk. Okay, so that's good. But the transition is, what is the person going to? He's in another group, a group that's bigger than sexual addiction. He is accountable to somebody. His wife is aware, and he has checks and balances in place that would be preventing any kind of future relapse. And a lot of it comes with being honest with yourself. And so that's why. Remember, there can be such an easy slide back into lying about yourself and your behavior. You can slide back so easily. So that's why it's really important to have an accountability partner who will call you on your BS. I mean, that's what's really important. And that's been a great gift for me with Larry, because he won't put up with anything. So yeah, just to safely transition from just getting free in recovery to staying free, those would be some of the tips. I'm going to jump down and pull one of the questions from the chat. Yeah. Okay. Under what standard are guys hitting 1,000 days? Is it just no PMO? Is it different for every guy? How does all clear requirement change along the way? Well, great question. Understand that all clear, as we define it with the Doing Family Right regroups, is the all clear document that I created, which doesn't leave a lot of fuzz room. It's not foggy, it's not fuzzy, it's pretty clear. And so for sure it's no PMO, but it's because we just talked recently about narrowing the grid, closing the sieve, tightening the sieve. There's the word, tightening the sieve. We just talked about that. And as a person goes on, they start to see where else they're actually tempted to go with inappropriate thoughts. And so I would argue that the requirement doesn't change along the way. It actually tightens up, and a person gets even more, more aware of liabilities and tendencies in the direction of inappropriate thoughts, right? That we can actually, stop that sooner. And so I hope it isn't different for different guys. Now, understand it's different for different groups outside of DFR, because there are certain groups that, as long as you don't act outside the marriage, what you do with your private life is up to you, i.e. porn and masturbation is all fine, as long as you don't do something egregious like that. Well, obviously we're far from that. So if you need a reminder, I'll put in the all clear document that you can have a look at. And so, yeah, that's to my knowledge, the 9 or 10 guys that are in the 1,000-day club, the standard is the all clear document that I created. How do you hold someone else accountable in our groups? Well, how do you hold someone else accountable? Well, first of all, it's a hard thing when you're in a small group and you kind of suspect a guy's struggling, and you have a choice to make. The choice is, do I love him enough to ask a direct question? Do I love him enough to be iron that sharpens iron? as we know in Proverbs 27:17, is iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. That's that steel and the knife and the blade is getting sharpened by going over the steel over and over again. So it's actually quite a process that is not, like cotton ball. It's creating friction, and so I think it comes, I would start by asking questions because you care, and we need to be a band of brothers. That means we leave no man behind. And so if a guy is struggling, I would argue that it's your job to care. I mean, I am part of a small group of 6 or 7 guys. And when guys aren't there, I send them a note, hey, what's up? And there's guys in the bigger group that I've even counseled that are no shows. And I've emailed, called, left messages. I've done what I could to try to reach out. But how do you hold them accountable? You just ask questions. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? How's it going in your recovery? And, if you hear week after week, I didn't get any any recovery work this week. I didn't get any recovery work this week. I didn't get any recovery work this week. Someone should say, when are you going to do the recovery work? It's a static set of material. It's 12 steps. It's not 300 steps. It's 12 steps. You do 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You don't do 13. It's a static set of material that you can work through. And so you hold accountability by risking to show care, by asking questions. How do you begin to let God deal with all the other baggage that has come with or been caused by your addiction? Well, first of all, that's a really good question, because a person there is recognizing the fact that either there's been hurts that have kind of caused you to stay in the addiction, or the addiction has caused complicating hurts that are a derivative of the addiction. And so I think, first of all, being aware of the fact that they're there, likely need you sit down with a trusted friend or accountability partner that really knows you well and isn't afraid to talk. And but you may need to have 4 or 5 sessions with a counselor to say, look, I got some family of origin issues, or I've got some distance with my wife because of my addiction I'd like to try to rebuild. And so the other baggage, it doesn't go away. Matter of fact, the idea is we open up the luggage and we unpack it and deal with the things, and we put them away where they're supposed to be, and we end up carrying a bag that's light, or even not have the necessity to carry anything because of it. But so I think they think there's admitting it, be willing to face it, getting someone to walk with you through it, pray with you through it, or maybe get a therapist, a counselor to actually help you along the way. Don't forget, guys, you can put your questions in the chat. I'll answer another one from the chat. What is our response to be when there's triggers and trauma that our partner has from a previous partner or past? When we weren't the ones who caused it, are we still supposed to be quiet ourselves about how their triggered behavior affects us? Okay, so your spouse is triggered, and you're not the only one that's caused hurt in their life. And so sometimes the trigger that you're sensing isn't because something that you might have done, but from something else. Now, I speak with experience here. Most of you know, because we've done a podcast on it, that my wife was sexually abused as a little girl from ages 6 to 11 by a grandfather. And I didn't do anything to hurt her. We weren't sexually intimate till after we were married. Donald's the only person I've been intimate with. She the same with me. And so it's pretty clear where the baggage is from, the hurt is from. And there were numerous times that she would respond in reaction to something that we might be doing, whether it's me talking to her or us being involved intimately. Well, obviously it was a reaction to something other than me, because but I think we have to move with compassion. If we sense that our spouse repeatedly gets triggered because of things in her past, be gracious, as it were, quiet yourselves, even though her behavior affects you, then ask the questions when she's not in the triggered moment. How you doing on this, hon? Is this something that'd be good for you to talk through with somebody? And that would be wise, likely to do. All right. Some single guys have had a hard time finding the motivation that might sometimes come from an ultimatum or a last chance that a spouse would say. Is it really worth doing all this recovery work? What's the point? Single guys may be saying. Well, you're right. You don't have the pressure point of a wife or a wife and kids that are saying, this is it, this can't go on. I don't want this in our life, etc. And so you're doing it in your mind for some future person down the road. I think that, first of all, no offense, but forget the spouses and your future spouses, and just realize that if you look in scripture, it's really clear that to be a man of integrity, God would want you to deal with, chasing after women in your mind, or in person, or in, online with porn or whatever. I don't see any room for that being, acceptable or whatever. Get your set of reasons really clear. It's a document that I work with, man, that they have to put a set of reasons together why they want to maintain purity. Single men need to do that for sure. The idea too is you don't experience the grief that your wife is going to carry if you relapse, or if you go stick with porn and don't deal with this. You don't experience the grief, but there's a lot of guys on this call who can tell you how much pain their addiction has caused their wife. It is a massive amount of pain that collectively all of the men on this call have caused their wife. And so actually, as of this morning, the single guys on the call, you're being placed in a group with other married men. And it's no longer be just a single group led by Cam, who, we finished that some time ago, and we kind of, our problem, my mistake, actually, your group went ahead without a leader for a good period of time, but you'll be each placed in a group with other married men who you can ask those questions to, and you can hear the pain that these other guys have seen in their wife's eyes because of that. Number 6 here, and don't forget, guys, if you got questions to ask, put them in the chat and it notifies me, and I'll answer your questions there. But these are the ones that the leaders wisely put together. What and how much should and can we share in the main group, to what should be shared in the small group, to what to be shared with just our wingman? That's a really good question. I think that intermittent questions that really are a significant nature to you, you're welcome to ask for prayer to the big group. But most of your day-to-day questions need to be to your small group. And then the most detailed check-in type questions need to be with your wingman, your accountability partner. And so selectively to the big group, not that they shouldn't, like if I have a big thing that I'm facing this week and just would like prayer for, but it's not something that I'm facing every day, would you pray for me? I'm going to work now. And there's a couple of female in my office that I'm attracted to, and I want to just live today good. Well, that day-to-day thing that should be a wingman, or at most your small group. But a daily request on that's a wingman question. But if it's an intermittent larger thing in your life, then it needs to be allowed in the big group. And so just the larger it is for you, and then the smaller day-to-day stuff goes from the small group to the wingman. And so most of your questions would go to your wingman or your regroup small group. How do we find all clears at regroup? Austin, do you have access on your computer to the all clear document? Yeah, okay. Because then I can keep answering questions, but Austin will put it in the chat, and he can also populate it in the WhatsApp for everybody to read. But all clear is that there's no online chasing any images, even if it's not porn. If I'm looking at the swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated, you're looking for one reason, to scope bodies. And we've used the words bounce the eyes. And I've said many times over that it's the second look that kills. It's not wrong to notice a girl. It's not wrong to actually find her attractive. That's not wrong. But it's when I take the second long look to do up and down, to scope body parts, and to let that tantalize me, to notice and admire for the purpose of selfishness, then I've objectified her. But it's one thing to notice her and say, boy, she's a pretty girl, well built too. Okay, that's it. Now I'm not going to look again and go up and down and watch as she goes by. So it does have to do with self-control of the eyes and self-control of the mind. If I work with a female and I find myself, starting to, as it were, fantasize in my brain about her, I got to stop that. That's the minute it comes, that thought flash. We've talked about when temptation becomes sin. Okay, we've talked about that. And so, but there's the all clear, and yeah. There's more questions from the chat. I'll throw them in. Come on, guys. There we go. Okay. How can I tell the truth all the time? Well, first of all, it is a real choice. But to the gentleman that I'm talking to who asked the question, that's how I honestly try to live. I have a desire to live with the level of integrity my father did. He was such a man of integrity, and my dad would never lie. I mean, and the beautiful thing about never lying is when someone asks you a question, you just answer it, because you don't have to think, well, what did I say? What did I say last time? You just speak. It's a beautiful way to live and walk. But what happens is, remember, most men who've struggled with sexual addiction have also had an addiction to lying and hiding the truth, and living in shadows and those kind of things. And yeah, I mean, how can I? You make the choice that I'm going to tell the truth. And the crazy thing is, you find yourself possibly misrepresenting the truth on things that don't matter. Like just tell the story, tell the truth. It's, these things are incidental. But like, I mean, if you're hiding financial spending, if you're hiding where you've been and you don't want to upset her, like just be honest. The hiding has to end. And so really it comes a commitment. I have had at least 2 guys who've moved ahead to get a lot of freedom in their recovery, who actually had, all clear day and also all clear for no lying. They want to be that accountable that they want to put lying behind them. And so that's good. How do we create greater opportunities for mentorship and sponsorship within Regroup? This is a great question. And some of you men come from recovery groups or other addiction groups where the 12-step program is utilized and focused on even more than we do here. Now, I've always seen it as a parallel track that each man is on to do the 12-step program, to do it on their own and report back to their counselor or report back to their small group on the progress they're making. But a pure 12-step program has sponsors or an accountability partner that I work all my step work through. And it's someone that's been farther down the road than you that can help you along the way. So how do we create greater opportunities for mentorship and sponsorship and regroup that really helps men get the 12-step program done? Well, we need to talk, and even amongst the leaders, and some of you men who've got a greater experience with the 12-step program and how sponsorship works. I'm looking forward to hopefully for the fall, getting this going so that there is, beyond the regroup small groups, the breakout groups, there is some version of sponsorship or mentorship that helps us with the 12-step program. And so I value the program, the 12-step, and we need to add that. So how do we create greater opportunities? We discussed what's needed, and we hopefully can implement that for the fall. It seems like phone calls are a struggle for a lot of guys. What are some of the mental blocks they need to get out of the way, or truths they need to know in order to consistently make their calls every week? Well, first of all, remember the opposite of addiction is connection. And so most of us fear connection because we've lived in isolation so long. It's easier to live in isolation and not be known, because then we don't have to lie as much because we're not as known. But one of the greatest joys of the human heart is to be known fully and still loved. And so I need to volunteer myself to be known. And so one of the biggest hurdles for a man who's lived in the shadows, who's lived addicted, is to be willing to connect, be willing to open up, to be willing to be known, and also to know someone else. And so the mental blocks are, fear, exposure, a practice of isolation that would have to be broken. Saying, well, I have nothing to contribute, so, who might ask questions? Well, you don't ask questions because you're an expert. You ask questions to help them process. And so remember, on phone calls, which we've done a whole, session on making phone calls. But if you don't make phone calls when you're doing good, you'll never make a phone call when you're struggling. And so to make a phone call, just checking in, how you doing? How's your week going? How can I pray for you? Have a good day, whatever. Or to reach out when you are struggling or tempted a bit with a phone call. Those are really good. And so because we're not in the habit of being accountable to people, it's hard to keep it on the radar. For a long time, I had a 7:55 a.m. alarm go off that said wingman call in the morning. Just before I would start my counseling day, I would just take 2 or 3 minutes and call somebody. And that was so that I would be able to, be tracking the fact that I've been making calls. I actually put a reminder in my phone to call someone every day. So there's some ideas on that one. At times, it's hard for guys to really understand the deep, deep pain that their acting out behaviors cause their wives, and make things about their own pain. What illustration or truth that would help get the proper perspective on how they've hurt their wives, so they'd be motivated to help them heal and not hurt them further? I mean, that's a real profound question. First of all, part of that goes back to the addictive fog question and emotional adolescence and growing up. Because as you come out of the fog and grow up emotionally, you realize the effects of your behavior, and you realize and start to become more empathetic. Empathetic means I see life from their perspective. I'm able to see the hurt that I have caused. You see, a lot of men in their immaturity will go, yeah, but you, and no matter what she says about how his past his actions or behavior, whatever, has hurt her. A lot of men, well, yeah, but you don't understand, and they start to try to explain away and minimize their behavior, or even minimize the pain that they may have caused, and talk about, well, it's hard for me too, right? And yeah, I mean, I think that it's really important for men to continue to, when their wife is speaking and is in pain, shut up and listen, shut up and listen, shut up and listen, validate their pain. Don't go, yeah, but you understand, and then you go to explaining your view of things. Let them express their pain, hear them out, seek to empathize, validate their pain, and ask, is there anything I can do to help you right now? And that is a responsible way to handle the pain that you've caused. And somebody said, well, how long do we have to put up with their triggers and all? Well, how many years you've been, acting out with the whole PMO cycle, or, the addiction problem, it's going to take them a few years to get over the hurt that you've caused. Let me go to another question from the WhatsApp chat. And don't forget, if you got questions, put them in the WhatsApp chat. How do you avoid exchanging your sexual addiction for another addiction? Example, porn to food. Really, really good question, because what happens is we are trying to medicate inner pain usually. So whether it's just the satisfaction of eating, or it could be the satisfaction of gaming electronically, the porn thing, because when you go with an addiction, it does give a hit, endorphins, enkephalins, serotonin, all kinds of adrenaline hits as you get the good taste there, the satisfied feeling of eating or whatever. But I think it's being aware. And right now, why we push you to do accountability work and to get in a regular group and be accountable, and those kind of things is just, and even all the recovery work itself. It's designed to fill all the time that you used to spend preoccupied with thinking about when you're going to act out next, secretly getting to your device or computer or scoping with the purpose of objectifying women. I think you need to be aware of it, and ask yourself, where is my time preoccupation being spent? And if you find yourself, eating often, or binge eating, or it could be alcohol for some people, it could be marijuana, CBD, gummies or whatever, anything to kind of take the edge off that we used to go to porn for. You're just substituting one addiction to the other. So it's awareness, it's honest recognition, it's being accountable, and it's monitoring those things. What are the difference between humility and humiliation? How do we ensure we always take the humble approach? A really profound question. I like it a lot. Humility is something that I choose. Humiliation is something that somebody imposes on me. I feel humiliated when I get caught doing something, because the shame and the embarrassment of the moment. And though there may be regret over having to confess things, humility is honestly and graciously and humbly acknowledging wrongs and staying in a position of gratitude and graciousness towards your spouse. Humility is a beautiful thing where you're not talking about yourself. So when your spouse is triggered, humility doesn't even bring up the fact that you have pains too. You can work those through with someone else, not with your spouse. But humiliation is a sense of shame or embarrassment. And most guys, when they've come clean, it actually feels really good to come clean and to get it off your chest and to know that you're walking honestly. So honesty and humility are a beautiful mix for a man of integrity. I pray to the Lord that I live and walk with honesty and integrity, humility all the time. And humility is a hard thing, because especially when you're starting to, put some days behind you and you're helping other men in recovery, you can start to get proud. And I mean, I love, but for the grace of God, so go I. Paul talked about that he didn't want to become the the castaway after serving the Lord all those years because he was careless. So remain humble. Humiliation is usually something that someone puts on you like a cloak because of your behavior where you don't own it. So you can be humiliated by the fact that someone's caught you versus you owning it. What's fair for your wife to accept? What's fair for your wife to expect? Now, I did an entire talk on that. And I have a document that I give to the wives, but I'll give you just a snapshot of some of the things that I believe are fair for your wife to expect in your recovery journey. We just talked about full honesty. I think beyond that, sincere effort, that you're going to work hard. Full disclosure, that she's not wondering about, are you being honest? Is this everything? And I think there's an effort to pursue her, and not sexually, but emotionally and relationally and socially, that she feels pursued and cherished and valued. That you don't even bring the leftovers of your addiction into the bedroom, but that it's not a driven thing by your addiction, but it's really learning to make love, not just have sex with your wife. But it's fair for you to be open about your recovery work. That's why I've got a document that once a week you should spend 10 minutes to just update your wife on the work that you've done. So those are some of the things that are fair. Matter of fact, it's fair for her to expect that you're accountable to somebody. I don't want her to be the cop. Well, I'll just be accountable to my wife. I'll report into her. No, I don't want that. I want her to be your wife and friend and lover, not your accountability partner. So it's fair for her to have an accountability partner that she trusts and will also report into her if you've been acting out and not telling her. Do we need to do more to reach out to the guys who have gone AWOL? AWOL is away without leave. That means guys leave their military base or position without permission. They are away from the base without leave. Leave is I'm on leave. I got permission to leave. So guys that have gone AWOL, they're missing. Well, I mean, I would say especially guys in your small group, to have tried for a while to reach out and call. And I've been chasing down a guy in our group here, still haven't talked to him. I actually sent a text to his wife, could you have him call me? And yeah, I think that it's a sign of care. Now, after a while, and they're not returning calls. Yesterday, someone who's in a crisis in another province, I became aware of the crisis, and I tried calling 3 times and left messages because I'm in a position to help this guy who I know really well. And I sent numerous texts, and he finally sent a text back. I'm not wanting to talk right now. And that's all I got. And I just thanked him for at least responding and told him that I was going to be there. And I recognized after saying that he's read everything I've texted him. So I recognize that he has heard my heart, both in the messages and in the texts that I sent. And so, you do what you can. Guys have various reasons. Most of them not good. I know this guy doesn't want to talk to me because he's making some horrendous choices right now that are not in keeping with his values and not the best for him, not the best for his wife and kids. Just a really, really not a good choice. So he's likely feeling shame, embarrassed, and all that. And I just said, look, I just want to care for you. I just want to care. I just want to understand what's going on and offer my desire to help. So yeah, I think we need to try for a while, and at some point we need to just release them to the Lord. But intermittently, I still reach out to guys that maybe been AWOL for 6 months from the big group. That's a lot of men to keep track of, and there's some of them I don't even have their contact information. But most of the time, it's men that I've counseled and worked with that I know a little better than when they've gone AWOL. I try to reach out. And don't forget, guys, as I got another about five questions left, that if you have any more questions, go to the chat and put it in there. I'll answer your questions as well. What are some, we have some guidance on what point guys need to get to in order to feel eligible and free to leave the group. We have that document when you're okay to leave regroup. But what about setting a time limit on it so that guys don't become career addicts in recovery? At what point does it just become another crutch to fall back on? Well, there are people that are in group and they're not really working. They're just there to kind of feel good. They're there to have someone support them and understand their pain, but they're not doing the work. That is hard. And so this person asking the question, of setting a time limit. Well, the problem with setting a time limit, to be very fair, is some guys actually takes them longer to do some of these written review assignments. Some guys can move through it quicker than others. So there needs to be some recognition of just differences that way. And the fact is, if it's a guy that's, kids are all gone versus a guy with 3 or 4 kids at home, there's not as much free time. So we would need to be aware of their circumstance, but also see, okay, I'm just finishing step 1. And we say, okay, well, it took him 3 months, but he's moving ahead. He's finished something versus, I've lost my material or whatever. I haven't done anything for a while. I think in the small group, if a guy's just hanging out to kind of feel good and not doing any work and continuing to relapse, that would be something that we need to call out. And I would be interested in having a discussion on putting a time limit on how long you're in the group, because some guys are transitioning from being a year clean to actually being a group leader, and they're going to give back for a while. And it's not a life sentence to be in regroup, but these guys are wanting to help other men. And so sometimes they're in a group for that reason. What's the best thing that a guy can do when it comes to dealing with persistent fantasy thoughts? Whether it's just persistent, coming, whether it's an old flame, whether it's on one guy I worked with, there was a certain porn star was kind of really in his head because he'd gone to her site over and over again. And so it's like she was his fantasy wife, as it were. And I think there's some practical things. And if you look at that, the whole talk about 5 alarm fires, and you got the shockers and the stabilizers, those are some of the most helpful things. But when you have persistent fantasy thoughts, I know for me, I pray out loud. For me, I actually go with the prayer, Jesus help me, Jesus help me, Jesus help me. I want to honor you, Jesus help me. I want to walk pure, Jesus help me. For me, I have some soul songs, some songs that I sing in my spirit, because these are often happening at night when you're laying in bed and the lights out and your mind starts to go in a dark direction. And so I don't sing out loud so as to, wake my wife, but I sing in my spirit the songs that really anchor me. If I am tempted to fixate on somebody, and it's it lingers more than 30 seconds, and I haven't got a handle on it, I will call Larry. And I'm just going through a hard time right now. I got some stupid thoughts going on. Would you pray with me? And breaking the silence breaks the power of the fantasy thought. And some years ago, about 4-5 years ago, 4 maybe, I had a lady just a few years younger than me who was already past her 3rd marriage come for counseling at the suggestion of her son, who I'd counseled. And it was really clear that she was hitting on me and had the low top and the short skirt and was leaning forward to, be a flirt. And between sessions, I called my wife And I texted Larry and said, ask me about my session. I just told Donald, I said, there's a lady that was here. She gave me the creeps just in how she was operating. But I'll tell you what, I didn't fantasize about where I could have gone with her, because I instantly broke the silence and the power. So that's the kind of thing you do with the persistent fantasy thoughts, with the possibility of going to dark place. And I would go back for a fuller answer. I'd go back to the one, about shockers and stabilizers, right? 5 alarm fires, and how to deal with those fantasy thoughts. When my wife is really hurt and angry at me for what I've done and lashes out, what do I do? Okay. So again, that's a fabulous question. What do I do? What do I do when my wife is triggered? Yeah, you guessed it. There's a whole document on that, and I did a whole talk on that, so you can look up that. But basically, what do I do when my wife is triggered? Angry at me and she lashes out. At everything that I say. First of all, you caused the hurt. Even though the trigger isn't very, it doesn't even seem very connected, or it's been a long time. I would just quietly listen. I would ask her clarifying questions. What's causing you to feel that way, or and then validate her pain. I'm really sorry, because we know that I'm the root of this, and it's understandable that you have reactions like this, and I'm really sorry. And you may say, well, it's not fair if she's yelling at me. Well, listen, the Lord and someone else needs to be the one to coach her on her anger problem, not you. And so put on your helmet and your flak jacket, and just humbly and honestly just receive it, because you're the root of it. But then I defer to the talk and the document when your wife is triggered. I got a few more questions from the chat. Where is the line between grit and grace when holding a person accountable? What is the purpose of consequences for relapses? Well, I guess the grit side is I want to call men to greatness. While I pray with men and I try to understand their relapse, I actually have a document, of course, called Relapse Report, for you to understand how you got there. What do you got to do next time so you're not, tempted or act out in this way? And so grit is we don't want to go here again. I love you. We're going to continue. You've made a poor choice, but that doesn't mean we're going to throw you aside. But so the grit is calling to greatness, is helping them look at the liabilities of what went on, and for a guy coming out of alcohol problems, an alcoholic addiction, it's just so tempting. Well, he's got beer in the fridge, he's got some hard liquor in the cabinet. Well, maybe be better for you to get rid of those things. Well, I just want to be able to, get stronger and, face the temptation. No, you get rid of that access for a good season before you even bring it in, because your wife might, want a wine or whatever. But grit and grace is walking on with somebody after the fall, but grit is calling them to greatness. And the question of what is the purpose for consequences for relapse? Consequences are a deterrent for yourself, that you are so serious about your desire to walk with integrity, that you are so serious about your desire to walk with integrity, that you set consequences for yourself. Like for me, one of my, consequences right now, if I were to act out, would be I lose playing hockey for 2 weeks. I play hockey 3 times a week. It's part of my fitness routine. I love it. I used to play college hockey for 4 years, and I just really enjoy the fitness it brings, the mental health it brings. There's a lot of things I really enjoy in my hockey. And if I set that as a consequence, I wouldn't want to lose my hockey. So I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do a PMO cycle and oh, rats, because I've set it for myself. But my accountability partner knows that, if I relapse, he says, well, you're going to miss hockey now for 2 weeks. I say, yep, I am. And so you set it for yourself. Even within a marriage, the wife doesn't set consequences for her husband. She might set consequences for behavior he does towards her, and she has boundaries and stuff, but they're more about boundaries than consequences. So yeah. Another one from the group, and I'm just going to do the 2 more questions from the chat and the final 4 questions from the regroup leaders. I'll save them for next time. Great questions, but we're just running out of time. It seems like men were created to be very sexual, visual people. How much of this do you think is the way God created us, and how much is due to sin in the world? Knowing that God didn't create men to sin, but it seems God did create us to be attracted to women. Okay, so the best answer to that is, imagine the answer I put together. Can passion and purity coexist? Can passion and purity coexist? Because God made us passionate people, passionate for sex, passionate, attracted to women. He made us that way. Can passion and purity coexist? Yes, they can. So we may be visual people and we may be sexual people, but God designed it that focus is on my wife. So before we even get a wife, we've already been off track. So we've messed up God's plan. That passion has a beautiful outlet called making love to your wife, and that you can be attracted to her. And yes, you maybe notice others, but you can't go in your attractive release that direction, whether it's fantasy thoughts or actually the PMO or some version of FMO, fantasy masturbation orgasm. And so the idea that passion and purity can coexist. And all you guys who think, well, I just have a higher sexual drive than other men, you don't understand. That's addiction talk. That's BS. We all have high sexual drives. We all are visually stimulated. That's how God made us. But we're called to be men of integrity and purity, and passion and purity can coexist. I mean, when it says in Hebrews chapter 13:4, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure. For God will judge the sexually immoral and the adulterer. That is talking about faithfulness in marriage sexually, and the marriage bed should be kept pure. So sexuality with my wife is assumed, and purity is also assumed. And so really good. I hope that helps. And the last question for today: as a single person, how can I put into practice many of the lectures that are directed to marriage? Matter of fact, I would tell you that most of the married guys wish that they'd heard this before they were married, because they would have got their stinking act together before they took it into marriage. Oh, the guys that have regrets over bringing the porn addiction into their marriage and the whole lying pattern and minimizing. Yeah, I had a bit of a problem with porn, but I've been in regroup for 2 years now. Single guys saying, but if you're relapsing every 2 months or whatever, regroup hasn't done you a blessed thing yet, because you need to make some changes. And so the gift is to realize that the 1 in 5 ones that might direct more to married men and staying faithful to your wife. I mean, well, I don't have a wife. Well, that doesn't invalidate the fact that you're going to have a wife. And one of my best friend's sons who struggled with porn, I said, if you're going to ask me ever to marry you, because I marry friends' kids and stuff, because I perform ceremonies, I need you to be a year clean, because I don't want you to take your porn addiction into your marriage. I don't want to be there trying to help your wife through dealing with all the pain that you're going to bring. So I'm not saying that your pastor is going to say that to you, single guys, but I'm telling you, don't worry about, just learn from the fact that you're saving your future wife a whole host of pain as you get your act together. Unbelievable, great questions, guys. And I'll keep, as I said, the final 4 or 5 for next quarter, sometime in the fall, where I will answer questions. And I just really value your popping those questions online. Hope that was helpful to you. Enjoy your check-in time and continue to walk as men of integrity. So let me just stop the recording now.